All right. So financial literacy, how can you get your money to work for you? Today, my objective is to get y'all to understand what money is in the situation that you are in personally, how to think differently when it comes to money, and how can money work for you. Those are the learning objectives of today. The concept of money is false. It isn't real. But as a society, the government, we agree what it is and its value. And the way that that money is treated, it can be divvied up between the middle class and the poor and the rich. Now, the concept of money comes down to how it is spent, how it is earned, and how is it spent again. So, therefore, most of the time you have the modern society, which are the middle and poor class, that works, they pay bills and expenses, go back to work to pay more bills and expenses, and it's on a repeat cycle. And then the concept of money for the rich, or those of the upper middle class towards the rich, they work, they put into assets, they pay bills, and then repeat. Now, you could deem this down to the lack of understanding. The reason why the middle and poor class are trapped in this cycle is because they weren't given the financial education based upon their schooling. School was only there to indoctrinate and to teach you how to become a worker, not a businessman and just only an employee. So the one thing that the rich does is that they understands the difference between an assets and a liability. That's the difference. Assets, in simple terms, put money into your pocket. Liability simply takes money out. How you can think differently when it comes to money. First is understanding the financial ladder that you are in. This is very important, and this can show a lot about your spending habits, where you are on this fictitious but financial ladder, and also how can you improve. First, you have the income statement of the poor. They work hard, they work hard, comes for their income or salary, and then they just spend it on expenses such as tax, food, rent, transportation, and clothes. You have the middle class who has that job, work that job, salary goes to income, goes around to liabilities because now you're working into car loans, credit card debt, student loans, and then you pay those things off, which now becomes your more expenses on top of that. Because those liabilities that you now own, such as your credit cards and those student loans, you have to make those payments. And those, since those are expenses, they're taking money out. And that's what makes them a liability. And then you have the rich class. To me, I feel as though this graph is fictitious because they also put in that work. They also have their job, but after they get their job and that forms into the income, they put the income into the assets. Now remember, assets generate income. And so therefore, as long as assets generate income, they put back into those assets, then pay off their liabilities and expenses. I feel as though this is a very helpful thing that you could utilize in order to see where are you. And this could better help you understand your money and how it should work for you. You need to start thinking differently because you don't want to be caught last. You don't. If this is a fictitious thing and there's a rules and a games to play by, then learn the rules. Because my bad. Learn the rules because if that's the case, they want to play it, then let's play it too. It's no different. It's no different than everyday society than skateboarding or playing a video game. We agree what that skateboard is based upon what we call it. Doesn't mean that's truly what it is, but that's what we agree it to be. So then therefore you got those who work hard, kick flip, ollie so perfect. You got those that can't do it as well. It's because they didn't take the time to educate themselves on how to. It's no different. This can be applied to many things in life. And I think this is one of the most important things if you want to get out of that track of constantly going to work, repeating the cycle of paying bills, going back to work because now you got to pay more bills, right? And a lot of things that I noticed amongst my own community, such as like where I came from growing up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, is that they would confuse luxuries with assets, or such, they would confuse liabilities with assets as well. You know, you work so hard, and just because you got the money, you will blow it on some shoes, and that's like 200 down the drain, 150 down the drain. Or then you would spend it on the latest iPhone, that's $2,000 down the drain. You got some of these people who's putting that on credit cards, right? And it's just building up debt. It's exactly what they want. So you could keep going back to work and stop thinking for yourself. It's important to mind your own business. And what I mean by that, it isn't owning a business. It's either investing, it's saving, and putting more into those assets column. And those assets columns is going to generate more income, such as you see on the right side, which is the rich class. That's understanding the financial ladder. how much money you're bringing in, and where is it going. This can be very helpful when it comes to budgeting, when it comes to setting expenditures, when it comes to paying yourself. These are all things you need to think about when it comes to money. And my greatest tool, I'll say, is paying yourself first. If you pay yourself first, this is exactly what it looks like. You work, you got your income, you reinvest, such as save and investing into yourself, whether it's that real estate, whether those mutual funds, EFTFs, did I say mutual funds already? Yeah, mutual funds, stocks in general. And then you pay off your expenses. Pay yourself first. You realize when you very first get your check, you put in 1/10 of your entire income, and you will be far better than most of the people around you. That is fact. That is very true, because you will notice at some point that your income has now exceeded your savings amount. So therefore, you created an equal balance. And that equal balance is very good. That's the first step of getting out of the rat race. You have to allow your income to either meet your expenses or become higher than your expenses. Then that's wherefore you're working in the right path for you to understand what's happening, to understand that you budgeted correctly, that you set aside enough money, and then you paid yourself first and then paid everyone off. And then whatever is left out of that 9/10, if you could sacrifice to save up a little more, put it in there, because that's only helping you. Another way that you can have your money work for you, educate yourself. A biggest thing that the middle and poor class don't have is that education about finances, that education besides becoming a specialist. You go to college to become a specialist in whatever field and career whatever career that you find yourself in. But here's the thing, that's only limited to where you are. If you're a mechanical engineer, you can only be a mechanical engineer. If you're an electronic engineer, you can only be an electronic engineer. So then therefore, your usability can only be specialized. So that's within a thin scope, which minimizes your impact on the economic system and also your pockets. Another thing, you can educate yourself through a mentor. Find another skill. Work hard. It's not going to be easy, because nothing is easy, but work hard in order to find yourself another skill. So then that skill that you found outside of your specialty can also help you generate more income. It's a game. And if you understand the rules to that game and how it works, you will be better off. It's okay. There's no such thing as getting rich fast. It's an overnight hard work success. But you have to have that discipline to follow by your own rules, to listen to yourself, to trust yourself. And my biggest thing, I have a mentor myself. I'm currently working on becoming a financial investor and becoming a licensed financial investor and a financial advisor. And so that's what I did. I seeked out a mentor. That's what it's all about, is furthering that knowledge. If you can't find it in a book, find it in a person. Can't find it in a person, then find it for yourself. You're that verb. Be that verb. Make it work for you and work for yourself. So for me, I say I chose to become a licensed financial advisor and trainer right now before I actually get licensed, is because I realized the way I grew up, the way that money was viewed, and the way I viewed money was completely an indiscrepancy. But that's what I was taught. The school indoctrinated me to just work hard, but it didn't teach me how to let that money work hard for me. Because while you're working hard for somebody else, you paying more taxes for them. You working harder for them, which they get to write you a check, and then they get to take some taxes out, and then they still have to pay taxes to the government. Can't forget, the taxman always gonna get their due. So you have to understand, the harder you work, the more taxes are taken. And that should be more drive for you to understand, well, how should I have to work and not rely on somebody else? Meaning that job, meaning that career field, meaning anything that's giving you some sort of income and that being your only primary source. You have to understand. Seek ways outside of yourself and create financial options. That's financial literacy. Creating financial options for yourself that only isn't limited by an income. And then therefore, seek out books, mentors, and online resources, even courses. I highly recommend courses as well, because that can increase your financial IQ. Now, your financial IQ comes down to understanding accounting, which is the numbers and the story they tell, Marketing, how can you sell and what market are you buying it in? Then you have the law. You need to understand the law and the way it works. Because how can you know the rules? How can you play by the game if you don't know the rules? You know? So it's staying within those left and right lateral limits. And then just finding out what works for you. You have to educate yourself. That's the biggest thing. Me personally, I like talking about money. I like understanding it, the way it works, and how can it work for me. I deem it as not my God, because it is not. But if that's the rules of the game and how they're gonna play it, I'm gonna make sure I play the rules, the game. I'm gonna make sure I play the game to the best of my ability, including with the rules. As long as I stay within the rules and I go D1, then what is there to say? Sometimes you have to ask yourself, are you spending more than what you should? And where is that money going? So now we get into budgeting and finance, budgeting and investing. Budgeting is very important. It's a hard thing, but it's a very trained skill. It's very hard for a lot. You come from a place that don't teach you how to deal with money. So how therefore do I understand to budget my money? It's very hard. Me personally, I pay myself first. I pay myself first, and then I figure out what's all there. Make sure you make a list of all your itemized bills. After that, you make a net income of what you made after everything, and then okay, this is the leftover of my 9/10. Now, what I decide to do after the leftover of my 9/10, therefore, I could either reinvest into myself, or I have no problem just going to invest into somebody else. Me personally, we set up appointments. We get people inside of the door, and they sit down with us. All right, they let us know their mission goals, their money mission goals, and what they want for them. I work for a financial investment firm called Primerica, and we're looking for more appointments because all we're trying to do is financially educate. We don't want you working into the wee bit hours of life. The new retirement age has went up to 67. Me personally, I'm trying to be financially free by 30, 35 in reality. So you have to think about yourself. Do you want to work all the way until you're 37 years old? I think not. That'd be terrible. Back giving out, old age, you know what I'm saying? Teeth falling out, then what? Knees giving out. You can't work, and then therefore that primary source of income is beginning to dwindle because you can't work to rely on it anymore. So I recommend looking into more Roth IRAs, which I say are better than traditional IRAs. Look into other investment things, mutual funds. That's a very good one. It's where a lot of companies bring their money together, buy different things such as land, real estate, businesses, stuff like that, and you get a piece of the pie when they cash out. Um, Exchange trust funds, those are good for just like monetary money. When it comes to silver dollars, when it comes to gold prices, when it comes to whatever that you deem that is valuable, such as a mineral or the specific word, mineral or metal. So just keeping those things in mind. You have to learn how to budget in order to take control of your finances back. Pay yourself first and teach yourself another skill. Educate yourself. You realize most of the problems that we come from is not educating ourselves, and after we educate ourselves, not being that verb. You have to do in order to get it done, because it's either do or done. There's no in between. So be that verb that you are and understand the situation that you are in and what comes about. Me personally, I read these books, and then I created two-section columns. I gave you philosophy of money to understand how money works and to understand what it's about. And if you can understand the game, the better you are. These two on the left, The Richest Man in Babylon. Me personally, that was a book that was recommended to me, and I particularly enjoyed it. It's told through understanding of parables in an ancient city in, what is it, Greece or Rome, something like that. And it talks about the story of how can you take control of your money. How can you take control of your money? How can you take control of your money? That's the biggest thing. So that teaches you, that goes back into budgeting, that goes back into investing, that goes back into understanding how should you spend your money and when and where. And then I have Rich Dad Poor Dad. I've read both of these books personally. Great reads. I highly recommend them. Actually, all of these books. It helps you understand the concept of money, how to think of it, how to get into the mind of the money. Because it's a very funny thing if you're able to read those numbers, if you're able to understand the market that you're reading to, if you're able to understand the law that it's trying to cohere to. If you understand these things, you will be well off. I think Think and Grow Rich is a very good one as well, because it comes down to your mindset. It comes back to them creating financial options. That's what creates your financial intelligence. If you solely rely on your income, then that does you no good entirely. So you have to think about other ways. Well, how can I make more money that is outside of what I need to work for when it works for me? The intelligent investor and the common sense investing, those are just tools to see and analyze the market better, understanding what are which markets are the best to invest in and why, such as energy. Energy is a big one. That'll always be a return of investment every single time. Because these books also talk about the foundational investing companies and investor markets, because without those things we wouldn't have them. Lumber, woodwork, lighting, pavement, concrete, stuff is those natures that you can actually invest in, and those can always yield dividends and ROIs. ROIs being return of investment, meaning the amount of money I put in has been made back and then some, meaning that then some being the profit. I love those books. And continue to explore outside of books. I recommend go find you a mentor, go get you a course done. Spend the 350 that could make you hundreds of thousands of dollars in the future. I'm telling you, there's no getting out of freeing yourself and becoming financially free until you put the work in. Even if you have to seek it from experts, they're experts for a reason. But they've learned to specialize their skills to teach others. So therefore, they start minding their own business. Minding your own business is working for you, doing things that works for you. They reinvested into themselves and created themselves to be an asset and not a liability. They turned their specialized skill and monetized it, which turned it into an asset and made it a course. And now going right to them. But don't think that how you move money also impacts the environment and the economy around you. Because let's say they rent out a big commercial building. Well, now they flooding in with all money. That's more people, which equals more money. They selling the course up to $350 a person. So now do they get a cut? But also the building that they're in also get a cut. Well, 9 times out of 10, the commercial building will probably have those chairs in stock. But if not, you got to pay the people who put the chairs there. You got to pay the people if there's food and drinks there. You got to pay the people, and then those commercial people pay the people to keep the lights on, to keep everything running, the projectors up to date, the maintenance up to code. So it's understanding that you play a big part, but also a small part inside of a bigger system. Understand to how big it can come down to and how small it can come down to. Same, it'll be no different than if I say, hey, put a house here. Well, now that puts money into the carpenters that puts money into the carpenters' pockets, that puts money into the electricians, that puts money inside of the roof and tilers, that put money inside of the landscape and the property managers. And then not only that, that brings the income up of that entire neighborhood, the investment value of that property, the property value. That brings up the income for that property value for the left and to the right of it. Even if there's no land to the left or right of that house that you just built, you also raise the property value of those two lands by putting something valuable there. And to know that money will always be flowed back into the community. That's another thing. Endless money. Endless money meaning once I put this here, that could stay here for a while and it could continue to work not only for me, but let's say I settle it for the person thereafter. And then after them. So it's understanding what can you do for you that not only comes back in return and pay you an investment, but also seek you some profit. And you're gonna realize just because you just bought a $65,000 house for 35, and then somebody along and come pay you, 80 for it. Well, to me, you just made $45,000. You know what I'm saying, on the back end. But that whole time that you had the house, remember, when you rent out to a tenant, you need to allocate for the water and the utilities. You need to allocate for the property value, the yearly property value taxes on top of that. So then, therefore, whatever is left of that, then that's your income. While you charging them $2,500 a month, your income can only ever be like 150, 200. And that's your income outside of everything. That's the extra that, oh, wow, well, I got a few extra numbers to play with. So then, therefore, that adds into my income that doesn't need to work for me because it works for itself. And realizing, not necessarily monopolizing this, but you finding that little area of gap, that them extra $200 in multiple investments, because that was an investment you have made, then that can also increase the income or your asset income or asset income generated by your assets back into your pockets. Now, I personally have these books. I love this woman right here, Michelle Kagan. I love this woman because she teach you subjective money knowledge, meaning the book isn't intended to be read front to back to front. The book is intended for specific situations, which I love. I could pick up any one of these books and be like, let me educate myself on this real quick. I'll pick up Budgeting 101. All right, cool. Well, I know budgeting helps me better understand where my finances are going and how to save more. So let me read what specifically budget, how to get myself out of debt, tracking expenses, setting financial goals, and building my savings and budgeting. So these books encompasses a lot of topics, but I'm only looking for the budgeting. So I'm gonna go right into the budgeting section. All right, how can I do this? Then I'll ask myself, well, do I have debt? Well, I have an entire book on debt. You know what I'm saying? And then that goes back. A lot of her books are interconnected, which is nice. A lot of books like the brush over topics, and you got books that do a deep dive. Well, then when I know I want to get out of debt, I look at Debt 101 because let me see what type of debt do I have. This is still educating myself. Because then based upon all the knowledge you get, you could pay off your debt, you could budget a lot better, you save a lot more, putting money back into your pockets to help invest into those assets which generate more income and to educate yourself to get out of that rat race. It's not a sin in order to work on yourself. It's not. It's okay to, live by a budget because therefore you keeping track. You took the power of your money and not letting the money control you. That is very important. And a lot of people are drawn by the dollars. A lot of things in business, as you get older, you will need to understand or just get in that familiar field. You need to have the discipline to work with your emotions and not let your emotions work for you. You can't see a few couple dollars in front of your face wagging bajillion dollars just to say, right? For one investment idea. Well, if you're offering me that much, then therefore I know it's worth a lot more. You got to understand what is at stake here. Because since they make us live and thrive off of it as a community and as a government, well, I'm gonna just play the game and I'm gonna play it how every other person has played the game. But understanding that it is encompassing a lot of things. And I feel as though these would be some great foundational standpoints. A lot of these books I have read myself. A lot of these books I have read myself. And there's more that I intend to dive into to understand. This is a big thing about handling your personal finances. And I just wanted to educate on that. Because a lot of people around my age, being 19, 20, they're broke. They're broke. They live paycheck to paycheck. Well, how you get out of living paycheck to paycheck is in paying yourself first, educating yourself, putting more money into assets to know that you're comfortable. You're comfortable spending that extra $200 because you're gonna see it back. You're gonna see it back inside of you. And so I just wanted to give that peace of mind, that peace of thought. Let me plant that mustard seed to get your brain going, to pick up these books. A lot of these books start off slow, I will promise you. But the moment they start picking up knowledge, and that's what we're after. It's all about the knowledge. The more you understand, the more you put back into your pockets, the more that you are working hard to understand and create those financial options or opportunities for yourself. That's financial intelligence. And understanding everything encompassing that is financial IQ. And then those two encompass what is known financial literacy. Those are big things right there. So it's no greater than steps, no greater than an umbrella term, financial literacy. Well, what goes inside of financial literacy? It's just asking the right questions and being put into the right place. And I highly recommend that y'all, have a sit down to me separately. Come talk to me, come see me, hit me up on the wall, be like, hey, I want to know about those financial investment opportunities. Well, I could set you up an appointment with me and my mentor, and we could just talk about it. We're not trying to sell you anything. We're trying to educate you on how your money can work for you. And if you're serious about letting that money work for you, right here, I put out an entire slideshow for you to understand for yourself and make that decision. And so doing the action, just come see me. Just come see me if you want to do the action. Outside of me, you got books, you got mentors, you got courses, and you have classes. I highly recommend utilize to the world around you. Opportunity is everywhere. Are you want to take that opportunity or not? So I highly encourage, shoot me a text and we can set up an appointment. We're not trying to sell you anything. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I want to educate you because once I educated myself, I do not want to let that knowledge go to waste. Knowledge is to be shared. So I shall let there be light, just as God did upon to all of us. Knowledge is for the man. Knowledge is for all of us. Knowledge is for the man and woman. Knowledge is for us. So seek out that knowledge. Move in your purpose. Find your mission and then figure out how can you make a mission for your money. This was Brother SurJah.
I have a question, brother SurJah. When talking about your budgeting, obviously, I think pretty much everyone here understands. And just to say, that was a fantastic presentation. I think everyone here understands what you're saying about pay yourself first. Is there a guideline with the 9/10 that you're talking about left over? Do you have a guideline what to do with that 90% of the money left over? How much for housing, how much for food, how much for clothing, how much for recreation, things like that? Is there a chart or some kind of a recommendation that you have?
However much money you got here, right? This is your 100%. You take a tenth of that, no matter what that is. If you have $2,000, now you have 200 right into your investment account or inside of your savings. And depending on who you bank with, they also put money into that account. So here go my 1/10 and then my 9/10, right? So then I have my 9/10, and out of the 9/10 is what I pay everything with, such as my housing, such as my utilities. If you do pay them, you have to allocate those things. Any things that are expenditures, meaning those are a set budget to a monthly cost. Me personally, debt. I have student loans, I have credit card debt, just like a normal human. There's ways to break that debt though. So you could tackle many different debts with those subjective books. And then after that, let's say after all got left over, I got maybe 5/10 out of that 9/10. So that's upwards to like what, 600, 800 bucks left after I just paid everything. 2,000, I paid eighth of that or whatever that was, right? 3/10 of my entitled, realistically, 7/10 of that went all to bills and expenses. So now I have $300 to work with. 300 is what's left. So then that lets me know that's what's rest of my 9/10. The rest of your 9/10, you can either live 2 weeks out of the next 2 weeks off that. You can either take an extra 100 and invest that in whatever way you see fit. It just really comes down to understanding that 1/10 out of what your total, whether if you get paid monthly, weekly, bi-weekly, or however, making sure that you set aside 1/10 of what that could be. Then you pay bills. So this is the order: 1/10 paying yourself, bills, and then leftover of 1/10, leftover of the 9/10, in that direct order. It doesn't get no simpler than that.
You use the word bills, and I think we got to be careful about this. I really enjoyed what you said, and not all you said. A lot of it I knew before, but the biggest, hardest part for me is putting it on the practice. But the idea about bills, people say, these are bills, these are my troubles, these are my burdens, and they don't see them as they're standing in a stream of blessings, and a great river of blessings can flow through them. These bills are your water, your food, your clothes, your car, your phone. These are blessings. We should be happy about them and put a positive thing on it. And I really liked what you said, instead of getting the next cell phone, put that money and invest it. You could go on further and say, like Ben Franklin said, other people were all out having wine with all their meals, and he just drank water and saved the money, and he put that in all kind of investments and in the newspaper and everything else, and and communicated his ideas to everybody else.
It's a blessing that I got brought upon me. So I really want to educate y'all. I really want y'all to set up an appointment with me and just think about your financial future. Because you realize a few dollars a month can amass to $6,500. That $6,500 over 8 years can accumulate in a Roth IRA to millions. So let's get started.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you.